Well, hey, Michael Sayen coming back on the channel to talk about enforced monogamy. Wow, what a subject. Enforced monogamy. Boy, I think we could get in trouble for this one. Hey, if you're liking this content, give me a like, subscribe, give me a comment below. Let's get to it.
The falling birth rate is
Mm.
a direct effect of monogamy because of monogamy has a slow effect. And the monogamy was always, and the anthropologists will agree, that monogamy seems to bring a little bit more equality into the marriage because the woman comes with money, she comes with value, and she with money came power. And so a lot of women, when they came with money, especially if they came in with a lot of money in a dowry system,
Oh,
they
yeah.
were expected to they believed that they had power because power and money go hand in hand. We see that today as women seem to think that powerful men are rich men, and rich men are powerful men, and that's how women equate power. They always equate it with resources.
So I don't know if you saw, there was a debate with Andrew Wilson and a guy that's pro polygamy. I forget his name, but they had like a over an hour debate, and the debate
Mm.
topic was, can polygamy save the West with falling birth rates? And so this guy was arguing that yeah, it can, and then Andrew Wilson was arguing no, it can't. And I mean, Andrew Wilson, yeah, he kind of ripped the guy to shreds on how polygamy does not lead to more births and a stable society and whatnot. To
Well, right. Well, here's the thing: polygamy. What it does is it furthers patriarchy.
Okay,
Um,
I can get
so
on board with that because
yeah,
I don't believe you can have righteous patriarchy without having the door open to polygyny.
right.
I don't think you can have that. And that's actually what I was going to put in the chat for Joel Webbin's show that they did on polygamy.
Right. And that
When,
was the other guy's point was that polygamy leaves power with the man and monogamy gives power to the woman
mm,
because he doesn't once you're married you don't have anywhere to go. You have no recourse and you have the full weight of the law behind the woman in a monogamous society. But interesting in a polygamous society, you have the full weight of the law on the man's side. And
mm.
it's a man's run society,
Well,
and it's a man's runs politics. You're not
with
going to see women in politics in a polygamous society. You're very rarely going to see
with
that.
coverture law though, didn't the man in a monogamous society,
Yep.
when we had coverture, had
Yep.
the full weight of the law on his side?
Yes, but that was, and this is the interesting. How did that get dismantled? It got dismantled because of the women's suffrage. How did the women's suffrage came in? Because women rightfully said, "Hey, if we're getting married in a bilateral marriage, I'm coming. You're not buying my authority over me from my father, right? Because you're not paying the bride price. So if there's no bride price, there's no transfer of authority." In a dowry system, there's no transfer of authority. There's no value paid to the father for the transfer of authority. If there's no value paid to the father transfer for it, there is no transfer of authority. You're coming as two equals. And the women rightfully said that, hey, coverture was pushed because of my belief of religious principles of it actually has a very interesting background, but I believe it was the Anglo-Saxon church and it had a lot to do, but the starting of actually coverture, but it was codified. I think it was 1650 is codified.
Okay.
But the problem why it fell apart was there was no meat behind it, right? Because if women thought they were equal, and Christianity teaches the equality of men and women in marriage, right? The husband and wife are equals in marriage. They're both in the image of God. That's really the Christian message.
I was going to
Um,
say they're not equal in marriage, but they're equal in the
they're
sight
not
of God as far as salvation is concerned.
right.
They are of equal worth concerning salvation in the sight of God. But even the scripture says that man is the glory of God is man, and the glory of man is woman.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So even there's not a equal. relate
right.
there.
That's right. But that's
But
what
yes, we all have equal dignity and worth in the sight of God.
Right, but that's not what Christianity was teaching. Christianity was teaching that there was a real equality, right, in the early church when it came to Europe, right.
Oh, okay.
So
So you mean
they
the European church was teaching
yeah,
that
it's yeah,
women?
right. The
Okay.
European church, right, European Christianity, but or Christianity, how it affect Europe. Europe was polygamous at one point too, and the only reason that Europe became monogamous was because of the Christian influence. They say, which came in after Rome, so that they were a polygamous allowing society until Christianity came in there and it started
Wait a minute.
pushing.
You mean the barbaric tribes that hadn't been conquered by the Roman Empire?
Well, what happened was that's what AI Google says. So AI Google says that the reason why Europe was not a monogamous society as laws, there was no laws that was enforced monogamy. Enforced monogamy only happened when Christianity was brought to Europe, and then when Christianity started having its effects in Europe, Christianity is the one that brought enforced monogamy to Europe. So
I
Europe
thought
was
the
not.
Roman Empire would have brought enforced
That
monogamy.
was right. Well, that was through Christianity because remember the Rome was with 380 or
Yeah, in
had
325, Constantine declared
yes and
Christian, but way before that, Rome enforced monogamy.
well that's what this AI Google says. So AI Google says that
Well, I think AI
enforcement
Google might be confused because we were just talking about how enforced monogamy came about in Greek society.
well it came Greek and then it became Rome and then the Christians jumped on the Roman bandwagon
Yeah.
of monogamy and then what happened was Christians pushed a hard monogamy principle of no adultery, no fornication, no polygamous marriages. They pushed that very, very hard in the
Well,
beginning of
and what
Christianity.
I've read is that even in the early church, um, polygamy was practiced, but it wasn't until the 300s when Christianity became the official religion of the
Yes,
Roman Empire
right.
that then the polygamy kind of fell away and monogamy took over because that's that was the practice of Rome. And so
Well, right. Well, Rome, you were not allowed to have polygamy. Rome was
yeah.
monogamy. So that was monogamy before Christianity, because monogamy, we see that in the New Testament. So we see enforced monogamy in the New Testament. They were not
Yeah.
allowed to practice polygamy. Polygamy was unlawful in the New Testament, except for one small Jewish tribe at
Well,
the New
that's the
Testament time.
argument, though. That's what it's saying. The early church, if I'm understanding that right, did practice some polygamy. That
No, I don't believe so. I don't believe it was. It came to the. They believed if you look at the early writers, and I think the Righteous Ministries
well, wait
actually
a minute,
talk
though.
about.
Yeah, Right Response just talked about that. How there were some church fathers that endorsed polygamy,
Well, Martin
some
Luther,
that did
yeah,
not.
like Martin Luther was one that he wasn't
Well, he's a
supporting.
reformer. He's not a church father. So
Yeah,
church
yeah.
fathers would have been early,
Yeah, well,
first couple hundred
I think
years.
what their point was is that there was some going back and forth from what I
Yeah.
was hearing on the show, and that there was some, and the point is that the point I think with the Righteous Ministries was just as the early church fathers were unsure of enforced monogamy and polygamy, the church today is the same, still unsure, and there's good people on both sides of the aisle, and I think the point is,
I don't know. I don't think the church is unsure on this. It's monogamy only. Like there's
what? No, that's righteous.
right.
Righteous.
What church? What pastor is saying? Yeah, we're unsure
Yeah.
whether this is okay. Or
No, I'm
they're
saying,
all
yeah.
monogamy only. Like this.
No, but right, it's the righteous, like the Righteous Ministries, Right Response
Right
Ministries.
response.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're like I said, they're 99% monogamy, 1% polygamy. But I think
But
what
they're a freak show. I mean, let's be clear.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
those
But
guys
yes,
in evangelical American Christianity, they are a freak show
but
compared to
how? But
right.
however, these independent small freak shows are becoming more popular through YouTubers like yourself, right?
Yeah.
And I think that this movement there's an organic movement that's happening. Even this is Shaw. He's becoming popular.
Yeah.
I believe he's a Muslim. I'm pretty sure he doesn't claim to be a Christian.
Well,
But
like even just to make a point
sure.
back to right response, like Joel Webbin's church. I mean, it's out in the middle of nowhere in Texas. I think he's got like less than 50 people in his church, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he kind of presents himself as like a pastor of this large church and a denomination and blah blah blah. But I mean, really, when you kind of look into this is a tiny thing that he's got going on, and that's fine. Like that doesn't mean that he doesn't know what he's talking about or whatever else. I'm saying like that is a fraction of a fraction of what's going on in America here, right?
Yeah, but I
Like
think that
yeah,
I don't think churches are as a large as a whole. They're they're not united. I think that they're so the trad cons are united. They have a united principle teaching, right? You said 100% monogamy, no polygamy. I mean, it's very united. The trad cons are very, very united. They're doctrinally, they agree with each other doctrinally. They
yeah,
lead 99% of all Christian churches in the United States, or like they're the trad cons. They're the movement of Christianity as we know it. Except
yeah.
for trad cons, though, it does appear to me that a church's attendance are starting to dwindle. I think churches as a whole are starting to crumble. I don't think that they have. I think that probably. I think Christianity as a whole is starting to crumble as far as the church at large. And I
Well,
think
and some of that, Michael, I think is just the plain nuts and bolts of like people are not forming families and having kids.
yeah.
Like church in general is a place, at least traditionally, for families to gather.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you don't have people forming families, having kids, doing that kind of thing, then I guess everybody's going to have a church like the guy out in New York City. Shoot, why can't I think of his name? Tim Keller,
Mm-hmm.
where the criticism of Tim Keller's church was it was like a youth group for adults, where it was like 30s and 40s of 30s and 40 age people that were single and just hanging out at his church there, which I mean, it's a great ministry that he had. Those people need to be ministered to. But then part of his exhortation to his congregation would be, you guys need to get married and have children as,
Mm-hmm.
as well.
But
Here,
isn't that
I think
is
Aaron
isn't
Wren talked about that some about Tim Keller's church.
Yeah. But isn't that the TradCon message, right? It's like their TradCon message is put a blindfold on, get married and
Mm,
have children. And the red pill and the incels and every side of the red pill, they're like, no, wait a minute. Uh,
mm,
Pearl Davis, right, went to Michael Knowles, right, and
yeah.
very clearly said that, marriage, it's not a good thing for men. It's not a good thing for men. And so the question is,
Legal marriage, yeah.
right, legal marriage, even right, other marriages, because as you mentioned, cohabitation is what you say still allowed in 10 states, right? And so
Oh, you
eight to
mean
10,
so? Yeah, not cohabitation, but
not cohabitation. I'm sorry.
shoot, what do you
Uh,
call it?
uh,
Uh,
wow, we both there brain farting here.
yeah, the term for you're married by living together.
Wow, that's funny. Yeah, this is funny. You and
I
I
think what
just
it's
went drawing a blank.
7 years, and then
There's different states have different things. Yeah, but
you're technically
however,
married. But yeah,
yes,
it's only 10 states that practice that.
common law
If
marriage,
you,
common law marriage.
yeah, common law.
I don't
There
know
you
why
go.
we couldn't think of that. Yeah, common law marriage.
Yeah, there's only 10 states that have common law marriage.
But still, right, and that's dissipating, right? But it's still
Yeah,
like even living together. Because the interesting thing is that if you live with a girl, a guy and a girl, they cohabitate, right? And they cohabitate and they have a kid, right?
yeah.
Well, guess what happens? As far as when we're dealing with children and custody and child, the money that you pay for the children.
Mm.
Child supplement or whatever, child support,
Child support. Yeah.
that all that stuff is the same as if you're married or if you're cohabitating. It doesn't matter. The only thing they say differently between cohabitation laws and marriage laws is the property. How is the property, split up? But people
Yeah,
now, there's
you get to keep the stuff that you paid for.
right, or is under in your name, right? But then the girl's obviously is going to argue that with her lawyer. But so the thing is that what the states have done is the states have pushed back, and they've made living together harder, right? They made it so that if you have a child, used to back in the days here in the United States, if you had a child, you were considered an unfit father, even if you were living with the woman and you had children outside of wedlock. You cohabitated, you have children. The
Mhm.
father was considered legally unfit. The children were considered 100% custodial of the mother. Probably in most states, different states are different, but that's how the states looked at it. But then what happened was, since cohabitation has increased 900% since 1980s, since the 1980s, cohabitation has increased 900%. As far I read that in the stat, is that now what you're dealing with is that you're having 40% of the average person having children outside of wedlock, and you're having 70% of the Black community having children out of wedlock. So people are simply doing the same thing in cohabitation that they are in marriage. And the state is like, well, hey, we got to get our greasy hands in this, right? If you're cohabitating or marriage. And so they're starting to increase, in my opinion, the laws of cohabitation to make it look a lot like marriage. So therefore, what they're doing is that the difference between cohabitation and marriage in the government's eyes, I don't think that line really exists any longer. I think if you're living together with a woman, even if you're not in any state in the United States, and you have a child together, and you guys, don't call each other husband and wife, but you share property, you're doing all this other stuff. I believe that the courts are trained to treat you and to treat your relationship the same as if you were married. And because of that, people are saying, well, why should we even get married? And the reason why people got married
Yeah, I
before
don't know
was
if that's the case. I guess I'd have to see some real data on
right.
it because even like this is Shaw worked in now that's California, so it's it's a little more liberal out there, but he said, boy, when he would just look at the court cases of like, okay, here's what you owe, blah blah. He's like, okay, if you got married, oh man, you're owing a lot. If
Mm-hmm.
you didn't get married, you just cohabitated, and okay, like here's your child support. Okay, here's the formula. Here you
Well,
go.
it's because of what happens when you cohabitate. What the judges will look at is that he will say, like a lot of people who cohabitate together, they will have this. They will share their bank accounts. They will have both of their names in the house, right? That they buy. If they buy a house, they have both their names in the houses. They'll have shared property, right?
Mm,
And so what happens is if you're cohabitating. And if you don't want the property to be split or be required to be split by some kind of lawful means, then
yeah.
you have to be able to prove that it's just under your name. But that's real rare that you're going to have people who are living together that has families together that for 5, 10, years,
Oh,
and they're cohabitating, and that they don't have their both names, or both people sharing payments, right? They're both saying, well, I paid, the woman says the house may under his name, but I made these payments, right? And then so all of a sudden the
really?
court.
You think that happens? That like,
Yes, it does happen. So it does happen, absolutely. So that's
boy, a
that's
lot of
part.
people I know, it's the man making the payments. Like that
No, no, I mean,
sounds
yeah,
like
like
it works.
like no,
Like,
but that's the thing, is that they're going to say, like when it comes to marriage, everything is presumed to be from the point that they're married to be community property.
yeah, but that's
The
what I
point
mean. If you cohabitate,
they're
uh,
pretty much um, it's pretty much shared property anyway. So that's how the courts are going to look at it. It's going to be very, very hard if you're living together for 5 years. And if the woman's working full time and the man's working full time, is that the man to be able to keep all of his property, right? They're going to
I
say,
don't know. I
well,
think in my state, I don't know if that. I think if it's in his name and you were never legally married, it's his. Like,
that's how it is. But what's going to happen is that, and that's where a lot of cohabitation laws come in. They're like, even if you didn't call each other husband and wife, did you guys share property? Like some of the things in the United States, in some states, you didn't have to have an informal wedding to be considered
now would that be
married
one
in
of
the
the
eyes
10
of the state.
states though that does the Um,
That's what I'm talking about.
yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I would say. Move out of those states. Then.
Well, the thing is, is that a lot of times, obviously, you can't, right? Because a lot of times you're either working there or you already have kids there, or like
Yeah.
you're going to be bound there some way. Especially if you're old enough to hear this message, chances are that you have already owned property in that state, or that you're already married or dating, or already have a child out of wedlock in the state, and you have visitation rights. So
Mhm.
it's
Yeah.
it's going to be hard to just pick up your career by the time you're 35, 45, 50, and just leave and go to another state. It's extremely hard. So chances of that happening are really rare. But yeah, so the big thing
Yeah.
is
I mean, it could be, but people move jobs all the time.
they
Those
do, but they transfer, right?
like
But a lot of times they don't
these days.
just. But it's going to be harder when you become older because, like I said, you're going to have chances are you're going to have a kid somewhere. You're going to have if you're 35 years old and you're a man, right? Chances are that there's a kid somewhere out there that you're connected to. Either that you're paying child support or that you have visitation rights, or like I said, or maybe the job that you have it's not transferable, or to a
Yeah.
different state, or that you own property and you're trying to get. But whatever. Long story short, chances are when you come 35, 40, of moving out of that state because of these marriageable laws. But the states, like I said, are pushing back because the states that actually do this, not cohabitation, but the I don't know why is it drawing a blank with us. These marriage,
Yeah.
what's it called? It's I just said it a second ago. I have no idea why it's drawing a blank.
Common law marriage.
Common law marriage is that
Common law.
they're becoming less and less. I believe at one time that was probably common law marriage was probably lawful in every single state, but it has become less and less, and that has a lot to do with the feminism push. And not only that, but it's the government, I believe, pushing back those cohabitation or the common law marriage. I believe the government is the one who is pushing back on that. I believe
I
they're the
don't
ones
know.
that are
I
going to.
get. We're gonna have to talk about this more. I think because I haven't heard anybody saying that these cohabitation laws are getting tougher on men. In fact, I've kind of heard the opposite. That I know, like in Florida, they finally repealed lifetime alimony. So I think it could be the Overton window is shifting to be more favorable towards men because, like the one book about the marriage strike, how men are just silently going on strike from
Mhm.
marriage. And I think it may be slowly starting to change. I could be wrong about that, but I just have to see some real data because I know some of the
Yeah.
data points seems like it's going more in the favor of fathers that
It has since they said since the fathers' rights, like Paul Elam's group and the Red Pill, the fathers' rights movement, they say have made a positive push towards the rights of men.
yeah
Because right now what we're dealing with is like it was talking about on that one show that you were mentioning with Mike Walsh, I think that's it, and then the
yeah
other guy,
Matt Walsh.
Mount Washington, the other guy. But the thing was is that the guy was like, hey, 80% of divorces are initiated by a woman. 95% of alimony goes to women. 80%, actually 90% of all primary custody goes to women. It's
Yeah,
completely lopsided. The
yeah,
women got this interesting. The women use the 14th Amendment uh, equal rights clauses in the 14th Amendment to be able to say, hey, we want the right to divorce. We want the right to vote. We want the right for able to have children. We want the right to be able to raise children. We want the right to have custody. But now we're told as men, we can't use the 14th Amendment equality clauses in the 14th Amendment to make sure that we get equal visitation with the child, that we have, that we have equal primary custody of the child. But the courts are saying, hey, you can't use the equality clause in the 14th Amendment for men, but somehow women were able to use that in the early 1900s. So it's super unfair. But the men's rights, they did say, have pushed back. I believe since the 80s and 90s, they have pushed back, and we have gotten a little bit. But
I think the Overton window, maybe Paul Elam could speak to that probably better, but
sure, he probably
I
could.
wonder if it's starting to shift because, like, in Florida, they finally got rid of lifetime alimony. And even with all the women screaming and crying about that, putting them
Mm-hmm.
on the news, I mean, they still did it.
But I think it's going to happen is you're seeing men having little wins. I think you're seeing a whole bunch of little teeny victories, but as a whole, we're seeing society collapse. We're going to
Yeah.
see a women president here shortly. We're seeing the like a feministic culture to the point where the women are ruling the world, because I believe that my belief is that you can't have true equality when it comes to men and women. Either the men will rule or the women will rule. There's no real equality among the sexes. And since there's so much laws against the man ruling, I believe now is what we're seeing the shift where we're seeing that the women are going to start ruling, and there's gonna have to be some all-out war between men and women, just like we see today between conservatives and
Here's
liberals.
what's going to happen. The men are going to just all become, or it's going to become more and more accepted to be a stay-at-home house husband. And that'll start being the precedent that you'll be a stay-at-home house husband. Your wife will have the children, but then after her 6 weeks of leave, then she'll go back to work, and you'll stay home with them, and then the women, they'll see that it'll go a few years, maybe a couple decades, and they'll see that and they'll say, we hate this so much that we're all going to return to the homes and send the men out again.
Yeah, well, that's
it's going to
not
happen,
going to
but
happen.
that would
That's
be
not gonna
pretty
happen.
darn funny if that actually happened.
Yeah, no. So what's going to happen is we're going to see society collapse. We're going to see men are going to be forced to have like an actual physical war. I think what we're going to see is we're going to see marching in the street, and I think we're going to see large women marching, and we're going to see large men marching individually, and I think we're going to see a all-out gender war happening in society. And then what will happen is they will.
There's too many simps to make that ever come
Yeah,
about.
well, interesting. The simps. If you
Too
don't,
many simps to make
you
that
know,
ever
it's
come
the
about.
interesting thing is this is the thing to think about. The interesting thing is the simps are the ones who are in political or religious power. If you look at the men who are in religious power or in political power, 99% of all those men are simps. And there's for a reason, because they realize that they need the women's support and the women's vote. They need the women's money in the church. They need the women's support in the church for the church to happen. So that's why men are leaving the churches in droves right now, right? Is because and why women we're going to see start to enter into politics. Like it's interesting if you look at Muslim countries and they start to become, as a country becomes Muslim and they adopt Sharia law. What you see is that you see a influx of Muslims coming into power all at once, and that everyone else who isn't Muslim leaving and not wanting anything to do with that. And then what you see is that country become Muslim and adopt Sharia law and become a Muslim country. And that doesn't take a long time. And I think we're going to see women or feminism happen the same way, where we're going to see women coming in, taking power. We're seeing right now, I think we're going to see men leaving. We see that, matter of fact, in the higher education and colleges, right? We're
I
seeing
don't
where,
know. I think we might be starting to see where feminism is starting to go on the decline. I could be wrong about that, but
well,
it
because
seems
men,
like
yeah, what
it might be cresting now with as we see just things. It's like, especially, here's case in point with the trans movement. Like everybody's rah rah six boom bah until it encroaches on the women who, with feminism, says yes, we are equal with the man, rah rah rah. Until they have to actually compete with men, then they say, "Whoa, hold on, wait a minute, time out. Well, we're not actually equal with men. We need our own space." Blah 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 blah. So I think we may, especially as the trans thing came about, like we may be turning a corner here. I could be wrong, but I don't
I
know.
think we,
Here's
I
the
think
thing I
we
want to
are.
end on, though,
Yeah.
Michael, because I got to get going here. But the thought I wanted to end on, I was thinking about this today, is that for the birth rate, I think because men right now, they just changed the law. I think this year, it was either last year or this year, that men 18, they are auto enrolled in the selective service.
Mm.
which I was kind of like, wow, I didn't realize before you had to actually physically sign up.
I had to physically sign it when I was younger. Yeah,
Yeah.
I had to do that. Yeah.
And now you are auto enrolled
Mm,
into it,
yeah,
but it's only men that are auto
that's right.
enrolled,
Yeah.
only males.
Yeah. They asked Hillary Clinton about that too, and
Mm.
and she was just like, I can't answer that.
Oh
She
yeah,
was,
you sent me some stuff on that. That was really
yeah.
interesting. But here's what I think. I think in order just to get more women interested in having children, I think there should be a law passed that says if you do not have a child by 25, 26, you have to register for the selective service. Not that you're going to necessarily be drafted, but I think that could get the wheels turning of like, oh man, I could actually have to go to war if I don't have a child. And I think that could get the hens clucking a little more about, well, maybe we should look more seriously. And here's why I say this. So I was sitting on a plane last week. I flew down for business. I was sitting on a plane next to a young lady who is in the Air Force Reserves. And I said, hey, we got rumblings of war going on here. And I said, are you getting a little nervous with like Iran and Ukraine and all these things kind of going on? I said, you may get called up and have to go to war. She goes, nah, I'm not worried about it. She goes, if they call me up, I'll just get pregnant and then I won't have to go. And I was like, what? Like, really? You are an active reservist, and this is your plan. If a war breaks out and you got to go, yeah, I'll just get. She has a boyfriend. She's like, yeah, I'll just get pregnant and I won't have to go.
Sure.
It's like, wow. Now that got me thinking, like, maybe this is the path to more births. Like,
Yeah, I think you said there's too many simps in the office, right? We got too many men who need the women's vote, realize they need the women's vote, and they're not going to. They're not. I think the only thing is Trump was wise that he realized that if we want to change laws, we have to change laws to the United States Supreme Court. That's how we have to change laws because Congress and the state and the Senate and your local laws and the federal laws and the state laws, they're not going to change as long as women have the right to vote. But when you go to the Supreme Court's a set number of people, and the voting right doesn't affect that whatever happens, whatever they suggest or say in there,
yeah,
and it gives
yeah. It's
more
such a
availability.
horrible way to legislate from the bench. Is such a horrible way to do government in a republic.
Well, that's what
It's
that's
like
common
just
law.
so backwards. It's so terrible
Well,
to
that's
do
common
it.
law, right? That's the idea. We're a common law nation. So the only common law is through the courts, right? It's common to all. So it is part of the nature of common law. Now there's a lot
Make
of nations that are not.
policy from the bench is horrible. That is so backwards from what our founders imagined. Like, oh, it's
They
so bad.
they allowed both. They allowed both legislators to legislate and the Supreme Court to make laws from the bench, and it has
Oh, I mean,
caused
that
certain
is
problems.
not the way our government is supposed to function. That
Well,
they legislate from the bench. It's not supposed to function that way. It's so bad.
I think what
Like
happened
there
was
should be an outcry to make our legislature do their job. And the reason that the courts do that is because the legislature won't do their job. It's so bad.
yeah.
It's
All
man, it
right.
just
Well,
bugs me to no end.
we'll talk about it sometime later.
All right, yeah, I got to get going here, Michael. It's a good conversation.
God
But
bless you, buddy. Yeah.
26 selective service. I think that could help out with the birth rate. I don't know.
Never going to happen. No.
Yeah, you're right. It's a fight.
All right.
Well, that was Michael Sayen. Interesting conversation. Good stuff. Enforced monogamy, polygamy, polygyny. Boy, what is the way forward? What's the biblical way forward? That's probably the better question. I think in an ideal situation, monogamy is what we need. But sometimes, many times, it's not ideal. So maybe there needs to be a door left open. And I think that's what I told, Michael there, that I think to have righteous patriarchy, the door has to be left open. to polygyny. We'll see, though. I don't know. We'll see what the Lord does in the next coming decades, centuries. But we know this, what he will do is Christ will win. He said, I will build my church and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. Until next time, this is the Postmillennial Man.